Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. This is Nick Wright. Chris Canty is in for Chris Carter this
still
morning.
Still got CC sitting across from you.
Yeah, still do. You're right.
And not to derail the show, but I don't make many requests of you, Jenna Wolfe. Okay. I made one at the tail
end of yesterday's
show.
This is Chris Canty filling in for Chris Carter. This is the most annoying human on the planet.
No. The most annoying sports broadcaster of 2019.
Are you proud of that title, though? I saw you had it framed yesterday.
I mean, is he proud of it?
It's something.
Did you really put it next to
Chris Carter's
Hall of Fame enshrinement picture?
Man, listen, 64 entered, only one could leave champion.
Wow.
You're sitting across from him.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm going to hold that title. Thank you, Jenna Wolfe, for getting the honorific correct.
Got that. And with that, talk about our big show today. The New York Giants just might trade up for Kyler Murray. We'll tell you why we're saying that. The Warriors are gearing up for a three-peat, but we will start with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now that general manager Rob Pelinka was reportedly given Jeannie Buss's blessing to stay on, one of his first tasks will be to land a big free agent. Due to Pelinka's maneuvering, they are armed with a max salary cap slot, but they also have a coach who has underwhelmed, a team that has not made the playoffs since 6 seasons, and a recently injured LeBron James. Yesterday, NBA insider Rick Bucher was on Undisputed and gave some insight into the Lakers' interesting free agency plans.
I don't believe that this is Rob Pelinka's job and away we go. The referendum on Rob Pelinka will be this summer, and the big fish that Jeannie Buss wants is Kawhi Leonard.
Really?
If they get Kawhi Leonard, then I think that Rob, yes, has more power, he controls.
Nick, we have discussed all the potential free agents out there and who would be the best fit for this team. Should Kawhi Leonard be the Lakers' top priority?
I think he should for a number of reasons. And we'll get to the Rob Pelinka part of this. It's somewhat illogical to me that if you want Kawhi Leonard, then you should maybe try to go get Masai Ujiri. But I know we'll talk about the Pelinka and the Lakers front office.
Who is with the Raptors
who is with the Raptors right now and part of the trade that got Kawhi Leonard there. But we can talk about that later in the show. Here's why I think Kawhi should be their top target and not the better player who's available in Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is not a even plausibly realistic target. If you have, let's say you have a 25% chance at Kawhi Leonard, you don't lessen your chance at Kawhi for a 1% chance at Kevin Durant. Now, if it were close, then maybe you would. Kawhi Leonard fits perfectly with LeBron. LeBron would not have to change his style of play one bit. And I disagree with our friend Chris Broussard. I disagree with the people saying the next phase of LeBron, he needs to play off the ball more. He needs to play more of a traditional small forward. Let's see LeBron play a different style. Let's see him be ineffective at the style he's always played before we change his style. Kawhi Leonard doesn't need the ball in his hands. He is the league's best perimeter defender. We know his style would fit beautifully next to LeBron, and you instantly add another top 5 player. Like, he's a tier 1 free agent that wants to come to Los Angeles. You are competing with, at most, 2 teams for Kawhi Leonard, Chris Canty. The Toronto Raptors and the Los Angeles Clippers. And the Raptors, it might just be, do I want to stay or do I want to go? And if he wants to go, then it's Lakers versus Clippers. He will only be going to go to Los Angeles, so you have a realistic shot at him, and he's the best of the realistic options.
Well, no, I agree with you, and I think it's important for the Lakers to do their due diligence on all the free agents, but especially Kawhi, because we know that, he would want to be interested in going back to Southern California. That's where he's from. And so, yeah, I think it is a situation where he's either going to stay in Toronto or he's going to go to the Clippers, but that doesn't stop the Lakers from trying to make a push and try to get Kawhi to come join them. Now, in listening to Kawhi Leonard when he was on Serge Ibaka's YouTube channel, How Hungry Are You?, he was very non-committal about staying in Toronto. And so if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, maybe that becomes a real possibility. But if you're Kawhi Leonard, why would you want to go to the Lakers? It seems like you would want to go to the more functional of the 2 L.A. basketball franchises, which would be the Los Angeles Clippers, run by Jerry West. And, oh, by the way, you have a championship-level coach in Doc Rivers. To me, that makes more sense. With what's been going on with the Lakers and all the dysfunction that was, and then, of course, LeBron James dealing with the injuries that he did in the 2018-2019 season, there are some serious question marks that are going on right now with the Lakers.
So if you're the Lakers, Nick, what's your sales pitch then to Kawhi? Because everything Canty laid out is true. It seems like the Clippers are the more viable, the better, the more attractive option right now, less dysfunction.
Well, less dysfunction, definitely true, but maybe only temporarily true. And that's why it is very difficult to talk about the free agent part without talking about the front office and the coaching part. Because you mentioned Jerry West. I said the Lakers should target Masai Ujiri. They also should target Jerry West, not to get them both, but to see if they can get him over from the Clippers.
But if you're Jerry West, do you want to be one of those executives that inherits somebody else that's on your staff that's not necessarily your guy? Because it seems like that would be the situation with Rob Pelinka in the Lakers front office.
So this is and I don't want to get too in the weeds on this because I know that we're going to be discussing the front office part of it. But you can remove so much of the negatives when it comes to why a free agent wouldn't want to go there if you get the right basketball president and you let him make the decision on your coach and your general manager. It would be an added bonus if you weaken the Raptors or if you weaken the Clippers when you are pursuing a guy who would be considering the Raptors or the Clippers. But this, to me, when people say the Clippers are just obviously a better situation, what the Clippers don't have is an all-star. What the Lakers have is the best player in the world. And even if you don't think he's the best player in the world anymore, one of the 5 best players in the world. Sure. What the Lakers do have is a young core that you can either flip for something or that you would hope the new coach, if there is a new coach, can develop. They also are the Lakers compared to the Clippers. And that might not matter to a lot of people nationally. But in L.A., man, I lived in L.A. briefly when the Clippers were excellent and when the Lakers were terrible. And if you walked, and this was post-Kobe Lakers, by the way, you walk into any sports bar, the Laker game is on. The Clipper game is not on. You drive on the 405. It is Laker logos, no Clipper logos. Now, maybe Kawhi doesn't care about that. Maybe he is a superstar that actually is more attracted with the more under-the-radar team. I don't know if that's the case, but I do know that the Lakers should not say, well, you know, what's our real shot at a guy when he has made it clear if he leaves Toronto, Los Angeles is the place he wants to go. Of the free agents, Kawhi 1A, Kyrie 1B for the Lakers' realistic targets. To me, it's very clear that's how it should go.
So you mentioned that the Clippers don't even have a big star and the Lakers do. The Clippers made the playoffs without even trying. The Lakers only wanted to make the playoffs and couldn't with the superstar. If you're the Lakers, do you think they even have a legit shot to land a guy like Kawhi Leonard?
Well, I think they have an opportunity because you do have LeBron James. He's the best player in the world. But one thing that another superstar has to understand with joining LeBron, it won't be LeBron James' fault if this team can't get into the postseason or can't compete for a championship. It'll be whatever else is going on around LeBron.
Or the guy they brought in.
Whether it's the head coach, whether it's the free agent that they signed this offseason, whether it's the young guys not developing, whether, it will always be on somebody else. And I think that's in part why Magic Johnson decided to step away from this situation, because he recognized he wasn't going to be able to make the moves that would be necessary in order to move this franchise forward. He had a vision for it, and then, of course, I think Jeannie Buss stepped in and said, we're not willing to part ways with Rob Pelinka and or Luke Walton, and that was a decision that Magic had to make. But in looking at the situation, if you're a free agent, why would you want to step into a situation where you would get all the blame if the situation fails?
Because to me, first of all, there is that narrative that everyone gets blamed but LeBron, and I know it gets said a lot, but LeBron is also the most criticized of all our superstar athletes over the last, 15 years. So it's not like LeBron skirts by. But that is the downside of teaming with LeBron, if it is true. You know what the upside is? Dwayne Wade just had a year-long farewell tour where everyone acknowledged this is one of the 20 greatest basketball players ever. That does not happen. He's a great player and a Hall of Famer without LeBron. He is not the Pantheon guy without those 4 trips to the finals, those 2 extra championships. Kyrie Irving actually skirted from almost all criticism while he played with LeBron, only faced it once he went to Boston, tried to do it on his own. Kyrie Irving, we know, is a finals-tested champion because he played alongside LeBron James. The upside is, you can win titles and elevate your standing within the league enormously. That is the sell is not if it goes wrong, how bad will it be? It's if it goes well, how great will it be? And your point about the Lakers this year being a disaster, it's a totally fair one. The Clippers this year being one of the most overachieving teams in the league, that's a totally fair one as well. Despite that, the Clippers were a really good story a few years ago. and then all of a sudden they couldn't get over the hump and everybody left. I don't know if the Clippers are a team, maybe Kawhi's different, people look to as is this team going to be a champion, or is this team going to be an overachieving good story? I think people can see the Lakers being champions.
All right, well, there was news on Rob Pelinka and Luke Walton. We'll talk about that coming up a little bit later. We'll switch gears on the other side. Brett Favre chimes in on the drama surrounding Aaron Rodgers. That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We're back right after this. Welcome back. All right, we'll talk some Aaron Rodgers in a second, but first, Team USA Junior Basketball.
Wow.
Check out Isaac Okoro with the alley-oop. He's heading to Auburn.
It's a nice little out-of-bounds play, baseline out of bounds, coming up from the top of the key, booming on folks.
Yeah, that's all bad right there. If you're the guy standing under the rim, that's all bad.
Some even younger players. No-look pass for the easy land. Get started early.
Just a little extra sauce on that one. Look at that.
Hey, defense.
Eyes in the back of my head.
What's 19 doing? Just sauntering over to the play, hands down.
All right, finally,
this is dope.
To the Japanese B-League. Did I mention there was no NBA last night? Check out the robot draining a shot from just shy of half court, because half court would have been too far for the robot.
No. They've got it perfect.
That's where it was programmed.
Programmed to. This is impressive, man. Build this thing to be able to, they can adjust it where it is on the court, make shots.
How I feel about free throws. It's one shot.
Yeah, Jenna has the hottest of all hot free throw takes that devolved into her saying she could do 100 burpees perfectly after running a marathon.
Another day, we'll get to that because there'll be time for it. Another day, another chapter in the Aaron Rodgers saga, Cris Canty. Rodgers' numbers are undeniable. He's the NFL's all-time leader in passer rating and touchdown-interception ratio, but nobody really knew he'd be this productive when he spent his first 3 seasons sitting behind Brett Favre. Favre was asked by TMZ about the recent drama in Green Bay and what he thinks of Aaron's talent.
There's absolutely no doubt that he's probably the most dynamic player in the game right now, maybe ever. What a playmaker. And any coach that will attempt to coach him has to do it, has to tread lightly, because you don't want to take away what he does so well, which is a lot of good things, and handcuffing and say, okay, well, I'm a reining in and I'm going to do this. And I'm not saying Mike did that. I'm not saying that the new coach will do that, but I'm just saying you got to let him play. They really should have won more. For whatever reason, they didn't. They were that good, and they had the best player in the game. I just felt like they should have won more.
Cris, Favre touched on a number of issues there, but let's start with the first one. Is he right? Aaron Rodgers is the most dynamic player in the game?
Yeah, I don't think that's a situation where you can argue that point in terms of being a talented quarterback and most skilled quarterback the game has ever seen. Yeah, I think that's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, nearly a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. The numbers speak for themselves, but even when you watch him play, you can see his ability to go off schedule and be able to make plays, to extend plays with his legs, and then the arm talent to be able to layer throws and fit it into tight windows. Very few quarterbacks have the skill set that's even come close to what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers. So, yeah, it's impressive to see what he can do at the quarterback position, but you have to ask yourself, why hasn't Aaron Rodgers had the opportunity to compete for more championships? I think there's plenty of blame to go around within the organization, whether it's the coaching staff or whether their former general manager, Ted Thompson, and not putting the talent around Aaron, not being aggressive in free agency. But I think that the quarterback has to shoulder some of this blame as well, no pun intended. I think some of this has to be on Aaron Rodgers because the quarterback is the one that sets the standard within the organization, within that locker room. So I look at this situation and say, yeah, Brett Favre has got a point. Aaron Rodgers might well be the most talented quarterback the NFL has ever seen, but Aaron Rodgers, the leader, I don't know. I think it's fair to question what he's done so far in his career.
So I look at, and he's obviously not there yet, but had as good of a debut season as anyone ever has had in the history of the league, Patrick Mahomes. And if we're entering Patrick Mahomes at age 35, and he hasn't suffered any, career-altering injury, and he continues on the trajectory, and I'm a Chiefs fan, and the Chiefs in that span of 13 years have been to 1 Super Bowl, I'd be disappointed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's fair. Now, obviously, he has to do it longer to get in the Aaron Rodgers category, but he is as talented of a thrower of football, I think, has entered the league since Aaron Rodgers.
Sure.
Andrew Luck right alongside as far as being able to make every throw, different platforms, instantly being really good like Rodgers was, even though his first year with the Packers, the team wasn't good. You could see, okay, this guy is a special football player. And so does everyone share some of the blame when a team is not as good as it should be? Sure. But do we also, I think, all acknowledge that there hasn't been a single year over the last decade where we're like, man, the Packers squandered that great defense. Where we're like, man, the Packers had this great running game they just refused to utilize. And for some reason, a narrative has been built that Aaron Rodgers wouldn't want them to run the ball more. Maybe that's true, but we won't know that until they have a running game that deserves to be utilized more. We won't know if Aaron Rodgers can play a game management style of quarterback when necessary until he's on a team where it's ever necessary. And so I think a lot of the criticism about Rodgers has to go to the intangible, and it might be fair, about leadership, about prickliness, about not great with relationships, because on the field, aside from a couple broken collarbones, there's no criticism of him on the field. And on the field, there's plenty of criticism about the schematics coaching-wise, the talent on defense, the way they have passed on a decade of free agency up until recently, and the lack of a consistent running attack.
Favre said something which he tried to walk back a little bit when he said coaches should tread lightly with regards to Aaron Rodgers. Is that touching on a little bit of what you're saying, that the difference between who he is on the field and who he is off the field, and trying to make sure he's in the right headspace for both?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's almost like having any kind of working relationship. You have to be able to have a positive rapport, something where you guys can come together, and the end result being getting the best out of one another. And I just don't necessarily believe that that was the case between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy during his tenure as head coach in Green Bay. Some of the things that came out in the Bleacher Report article about Aaron Rodgers being resistant to certain scheme things, certain things with the formation, and not wanting to run bunch sets because he wasn't able to see the potential for blitz clearly from the opposing defenses. Like, all of those things essentially put handcuffs on your coaching staff, and they limit what your offense can evolve into. And so when you hear the reports about how Aaron Rodgers was frustrated with the offense becoming stagnant, or Mike McCarthy not being creative enough to take advantage of his skill set, I think the quarterback has some responsibility in that, because if you're not allowing the head coach to do things that he deems in the best interest of the team and in your best interest, then it's a problem. And so when players see that in the locker room, that can become a big issue. And I think that the guys that have been around that Green Bay Packers franchise the last several years understand that there's a little bit of a strained dynamic between Aaron Rodgers and the coaching staff.
But Aaron Rodgers, and I think we'd all agree, his relationship with Mike McCarthy, or his rigidity when it comes to the types of offense he wants to run, has nothing to do with the 36 points per game their defense has given up on average in the 7 playoff losses in his career. I don't think it has anything to do with Mike McCarthy through incredibly conservative start to finish play calling, costing them a chance to go to the Super Bowl in 2014 in that conference championship game against the Seattle Seahawks, and then some bad luck. Brandon Bostic. I mean,
that was the onside kick.
The onside kick, and then also they don't win the coin toss, and the defense can't get a stop. Like, there are a lot of ways with that exact game plan they win despite the game plan.
Sure.
But there's a lot of ways where even if they give up the onside kick, they're up 10 still instead of being up 4 at the time, and they win despite it. Rodgers knows how talented he is. And I think he has grown frustrated by the fact that he knows that the way we also know he has media rabbit ears, right? He records all his interviews that he does. He came out and responded 3 times now to this article. He is I think it's fair to say, a sensitive guy when it comes to his position. He knows, fairly or otherwise, that Dan Marino doesn't ever get discussed as the greatest, even really, I think it's left out of the top 5 conversation because of the lack of winning. He knows that John Elway, who all of Elway's numbers, all of those things say, okay, this guy was really, really good, but not one of the greats. But he's always discussed as one of the greats because he went to 5 Super Bowls and won 2 of them. And I think there's an element of, man, I am going to be judged, and some guys care about this, and I think he's one of them. I'm going to be judged based on things totally out of my control. The defense, the personnel. So the things that are in my control, the offense, let me control it. And so maybe because you have so little control when you're not on the field in football, maybe that has made him try to take an outsized control over the offense, and maybe that caused some of the confrontation with Mike McCarthy. But also, I don't think Mike McCarthy evolved with the NFL. I think Mike McCarthy's stuff grew stale. And I think Matt LaFleur, I don't know if Matt LaFleur is going to be good or bad, but I don't think it's going to be stale. I think he's going to add things to the offense that will at least intellectually stimulate Aaron Rodgers.
I don't know how fair it is to criticize Mike McCarthy in that regard. We just don't know what he wanted to do versus what Aaron Rodgers was going out there and executing. So I don't know if we can put that on Mike McCarthy. The one thing I will say, though, when you talk about all the moving parts that Aaron Rodgers has no control over, even in a situation where he's as good as he is, he still needs coaching. I mean, Tom Coughlin had a sign in his office that said coaching is making men do what they don't want to do so they can become what they want to become. You have to be pushed as a player. You have to be able to grow. You have to be able to learn. It just doesn't feel like Aaron Rodgers was willing to do that under Mike McCarthy. Maybe things will change with Matt LaFleur. We'll have to take a wait-and-see approach. But I don't think it's fair to put all of that on Mike McCarthy in terms of the stagnant play calling.
And then the question then becomes, have the Packers wasted all that talent they've had in Aaron Rodgers? We'll talk about that. Eric Mangini will join us in a little bit. But coming up, should the Lakers keep Luke Walton and Rob Pelinka now that Magic is gone? We discuss next on First Things First. Tomorrow on FS1, we got some baseball for you. Rockies and Giants at 4 Eastern, followed by Robbie Cano and the Mets taking on Freddie Freeman and the Braves. It's an MLB doubleheader tomorrow on FS1 and the Fox Sports app.
I've decided since I live in New York and I don't have an NL team, I'm going to be a Mets fan.
Okay, there you go.
They need to.
Go against the grain.
I don't
Too
know
many
if
Yankee fans around here.
I don't know if it's Robbie Cano's Mets. It's probably Pete Alonso's Mets at this point.
There you go.
Back here with Chris Kenny. And Sarah Kustok is joining us, and we are going viral. Tiger Woods fired off a 270 yesterday during round 1 of the Masters. Woods sits 4 back from the leaders, and we'll have all eyes on him today, including another GOAT, Tom Brady. Nick, what do you think?
Oh, look at Tom Brady showing some love. Will Tiger be in contention on Sunday? Here's what I know. I know that Tiger has never played the first round of the Masters great. He only has 1 round under 70 in his career at the first round of the Masters.
He gets nervous.
He's nervous. He's never gone on the front 9. The historic Masters they won in 97, the 18 under. He went 40-30. 40 on the front, 30 on the back to get to 70. So this ties for his second best round. He got to 3 under at one point yesterday. Looked like that. He was in the lead. And then Brooks Koepka and DeChambeau had great late into the afternoon rounds. Yep. Tiger needs to shoot about a 69 today. I think it'd be fine. And then we'll see what he does Saturday. But I think he's a top 10 guy this weekend. I'm not going to say he's going to win it.
Who do you have?
Tiger.
Okay.
I have Tiger.
Wow.
I'm not going to say it, but that's who I put my money on.
I'm just so excited. This weekend, if we have Tiger in contention and the first weekend of the NBA playoffs, oh, my God.
You want to hang out and get lunch on this weekend?
Oh, my God. No. It's me and my wife's anniversary Saturday. It's a bad beat for her. Wow. It's a bad beat.
Time for your AT&T wake-up call. Yesterday, Bleacher Report released their list of the top 50 players in the playoffs. Giannis was first, Harden second, and Steph rounding out the top 3. Sarah Kustok, what do you think? You agree with this list?
Yeah, I like this list. And I like the fact that Giannis is up top. I am riding the Milwaukee Bucks in a Antetokounmpo trade. I think he's going to have a just absolutely phenomenal postseason. And I also think it's important we talk so much about Harden and Giannis and in this MVP conversation to see Steph up there, because I do think if he gets healthy, he's the guy that all eyes are going to be on.
I think Bleacher Report's top 4 was perfect. This is the exact list I would have had it. Now, I had Harden winning MVP this year, but that's a different question.
Yes.
The best player in these playoffs is Giannis, and it gives due respect to Steph and Kevin Durant. Now, they got a little wacky with Jokic being 5th and Embiid being outside of the top 7, but I totally agree with this initial rank.
Yeah, I don't know about Jokic being 5th. He was a ghost when they matched up against the Golden State Warriors last time.
All right, yesterday,
correct.
The Kings extended the contract of general manager Vlade Divac, and his first move after the new deal was firing coach Dave Joerger. Sacramento won 39 games this season, their most since 2006. Nick, what do you make of the Kings' moves?
No matter how dysfunctional your NBA franchise is, Thank God for the Kings. Like, who in the world thought the Kings did anything but drastically overachieve this year? They fired Mike Malone a few years ago. He might win Coach of the Year this year for Denver. Now they're firing Dave Yeager, who I like Buddy Hield. I love De'Aaron Fox. But they damn near were a 500 team with those two guys your best players. But, hey, if you can consolidate power around Vlade Divac, Hall of Famer Vlade Divac, mind you, I guess that's something you got to do. Sarah, I was baffled by this.
Well, we had been hearing about friction since before the start of the season, and even when they were in playoff contention, there was still all of that talk. So it doesn't surprise me that something happened, but that's going to be one of the most coveted jobs because they have a young core that exceeded expectations this season. That's a lot of promise.
Sometimes friction gets a bad rap, though. Friction can help you keep accountable. It keeps everybody sharp within the organization. I saw a lot of young players on that Kings team that ascended and got better as the season progressed.
Yeah, look at the Lakers. The latest news speaking of which, out of the Lakers organization is that there won't be any moves out of the Lakers organization, at least not anytime soon. It is being reported that Jeannie Buss has no immediate plans to fire head coach Luke Walton or general manager Rob Pelinka. For a little background, Walton has 50 more losses than wins over his 3 seasons as the head coach. Nick, do the Lakers need to move on from both Luke Walton and Rob Pelinka?
I read these stories that are coming out of Los Angeles, and I can't believe it. The Lakers might let Luke Walton outmaneuver them. Like, Luke Walton be a hot candidate for that opening Kings job. Like, if other people want him, then what is happening? Like, what? First of all, a little vindication for Magic here, because these leaks still coming. Magic's not there anymore. So everyone's like, we get tight ship here in Los Angeles. Magic was just talking to everybody. Okay, well, the leaks are still coming. Mm-hmm. Why would you put any message out other than this? Our entire focus is in filling our vacant president of basketball operations job. We think it is the best job in all of sports. You get to run the Los Angeles Lakers, and you inherit a team with the best player in the world. And we are going to hire the best person possible, and anyone else in the organization, their future will be determined by that person. Why are you adding in prerequisites that might make the best person available say, well, so if I come there, I don't have the flexibility with my own coach? And I'm not saying Rob Pelinka needs to be fired. I'm saying that needs to be a decision for the person they hire. I am saying Luke Walton needs to be fired, but I also think whomever they hire would come to that conclusion. I don't understand how the Lakers could possibly be taking what was, even though it was awkward, a gift given to them by Magic Johnson, which is an opportunity to reset how this franchise is being run and have the response be, no, you know what? We think this year went pretty well, and we just want to run it back. I don't understand it.
Well, and my hope is that the reason why, and I differ in my opinion of Luke Walton with you. I think that he has been under very challenging circumstances in these first few seasons, so we haven't got a true chance to see what type of coach he is. I believe that he could be a very good coach in the NBA, but that aside, I am hoping that Jeannie Buss and the decision to keep Pelinka and Walton where they're at right now is just to keep the organization running during the time being. They've got draft workouts coming up. There's things organizationally you need to do during this time period, so you have people in place that can get those things done. To your point, Nick, I 100% agree that this job, this is going to be we talk so much about free agency. Who's going to come to Lakers in free agency? To me, it's not about that. Who are you going to hire to entirely put this organization back in line? And they should have free reign to hire whoever they want, to have their people in. Think about how much we talked about throughout the course of the season. Well, it's not their people. And I think one of the underrated things, and I'll include myself in this boat, we talk so much about Walton not being Rob Pelinka and Magic's guy. Well, Pelinka, clearly, as Magic had stated, was not his guy. And so it is about hiring the best candidate out there. And I do think that you could look at those that are currently in positions now. Don't hold yourself to just people who are available.
Of course.
They can entice others that are in positions.
Well, you got to bring in competent people to work in the front office. I mean, Rob Pelinka didn't have much experience working in the front office. He worked with front offices and getting player contracts done. He was Kobe agent, and so that's why Jeannie Buss has that long-standing relationship with him. But you talked about the offseason starting for the Lakers and how much work that needs to be done. I'm right there with Nick. I think the priority for the Lakers absolutely has to be finding who the next team president is going to be and then empowering them and giving them the autonomy to hire the people that they want in the building, working with them, and they can build this team according to their vision. I don't think it's a situation where you can let Rob Pelinka and Luke Walton stay around and go through player evaluations and go through the offseason and then at some point, whether it's after the draft or after free agency, decide you're going to move on from them. I think that's too late at that point. I think this organization needs a drastic change. They have to pivot. This was a failed season no matter how you look at it, and I think they've got to go out there and find somebody that they can trust, empower that individual to make the decisions to move them into the future.
And here's the thing. I want to be fair to Rob Pelinka. I don't know if Rob Pelinka is good or bad at his job because I don't know what the separation of powers was between Magic and Pelinka. Like, was Rob Pelinka just quietly behind the scenes saying, Magic, we need shooters? And Magic says, no, we're doing it the right way. Or was Rob fully on board? Because the way Magic and Rob presented their relationship is we both get up at 5 a.m., we call each other, we're best buds. That clearly was a lie. That clearly they were not hand in glove relationship-wise. But you can make a case, Rob Pelinka. Somebody drafted Kyle Kuzma 27th. Somebody drafted Josh Hart 30th. Those were good draft picks.
Yes.
You know, and so somebody does need to get credit for that. On the Luke Walton front, I am not saying Luke Walton won't one day be a good head coach. What I am saying is this. If they run it back with Luke and just elevate Pelinka, are they doing anything differently that, as an organization, that they would be doing if LeBron didn't sign there? If LeBron didn't sign there and they just had this young core and Magic resigned, then I think you could make the argument, hey, this year was hurt by injuries. We're going to keep it going. You cannot treat this situation as if there isn't the elephant in the room, which is you have the LeBron James with a couple years left of MVP caliber play. And what do we do to maximize it? To your point about going after guys that are in current positions, Mark Stein reported they'd go after Bob Myers. There could be a bonus in that. I don't think Klay Thompson's realistic, but maybe he is as a free agent if Bob Myers comes. You brought up Jerry West. I think that's a tough sell, but if you get him, maybe that weakens Kawhi Leonard's want to go to the Clippers. I brought up Masai Ujiri. I know that would weaken Kawhi Leonard's want to stay with the Raptors. There are people in positions that we know can do the job. There's David Griffin sitting out there who we know can do the job.
So there are guys who can help begin the domino effect of all the needs that the Lakers have, but status quo is not the right answer. Status quo doesn't get you any of the things, the shooters, the free agent, the coach, any of those things.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you brought up the word trust. More than when you look at organizations in the infrastructure of front offices that are successful, it is about trust, and that's not just about two guys getting along. We always hear this when you hear about R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich, about how the beauty of their relationship is their synergy, but also that they will disagree with one another. And they will have different perspectives, different opinions. It's a collaborative effort amongst the entire group and entire front office. And that, I think, is what you need when it comes to, that's when people say having their own people. It's not just, oh, this is my buddy, and I like him, and I like to be at work with him every day.
You have an established working relationship, and you know you can believe in and rely on the other person.
The only good thing to come out of all this is that we get stories for days and days and days. All right, let's move on to the Warriors now, who begin their road to a three-peat this weekend against the Clippers. Golden State favored by 12.5 in Game 1, while also remaining the overwhelming betting favorites to win it all. Why? Well, for one, Warriors are 32-6 over the past two postseasons. Also, Curry, Klay, KD, Dre, and a little Boogie. Nick, who do you think has the best chance to knock off the Warriors?
That's an amazing number, what you just said there. I was fact-checking you in my head. I was like, 32-6? They lost 3 games to the Rockets. Yeah, 32-6.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's
It's
the.
amazing.
I mean, I've said on the show a bunch of times the only team to take them past 5 games was the Rockets. But to put it in that context, I saw them prompter. I said 32-6. Well, what? Since the All-Star break, that can't be right. That's unbelievable. Right. So, for a team that's only lost 6 times in 2 years, can a team beat them 4 times in 7 games? That's the question. Who's the biggest threat? The only team, to me, that's threatened them this whole run. It's Houston. It's been Houston. It will continue to be Houston. I think the people in Houston, while, if they're being totally honest, Of course, they wanted the 2 seed. And of course, just like everyone in the Western Conference playoffs, they were hoping wherever they landed, they'd be matched up against the Clippers, not the Thunder, not the Spurs, not the Jazz. But the silver lining to the Rockets facing the Warriors in the second round, if I just advanced them past Utah, is one of the fair knocks on James Harden. There's a lot of unfair knocks, is he has worn down as playoffs have gone on. And now you will be getting your most important series 2 weeks earlier, 5 to 7 games earlier than you got it last year. You won't be getting it in middle of May. You will be getting it in the very beginning of May. And so that, I think, could benefit them. And if you're going to beat the Warriors, you need some luck. You need one of the things that helped the Rockets last year was Iggy got dinged, and that was a big moment in that series that kind of got forgotten. You need to have one of those 23-plus three-point nights. You need to have a night where Steph just goes cold or KD goes cold. But the Rockets are the only team, to me, that have more than a puncher's chance, that can look at the Warriors eye to eye, player for player, and say, we know what we want to do here, we know what we want to do here, we know what we want to do here, and they know they can win in Oracle in the playoffs, which almost nobody in the league knows other than them.
Well, I would say, I want to make it clear that I do Golden State, I think, is head and shoulders above everyone. So when we talk about teams that have a chance, I think it's, these are teams that have the best chance. I would say Houston, I believe, has the best chance in the West to knock off the Warriors, but if we are talking about the entire NBA, I think whoever comes out of the East has the best chance to beat the Warriors. And I'm picking the Milwaukee Bucks to come out of the East. I think when you look at Milwaukee, the way they've matched up against Golden State throughout the course of this season, even going back to last season, but they've made a tremendous leap. Their versatility, the way in which we talk so much about positionless basketball, and that started with Golden State. That is what Milwaukee brings. I think they have depth. You got a star in Giannis Antetokounmpo who can take over games at certain points, and I think also what they've done defensively is impressive in understanding you need to slow down the Warriors, but more than anything, it's about can you score with this team. And I do believe with the added three-point shooting of the Bucks, I think they have the best chance to knock off Golden State.
The one thing I will say about the Bucks, and I love everything that they've done, Budenholzer and Giannis Antetokounmpo, the year that he's had. I mean, he's my MVP. I know, Nick, you think it's James Harden, but they've impressed me this entire season. But there is something to be said for having experience in the postseason. And Milwaukee doesn't necessarily have the best track record and the most experience of these teams. The game changes once we get into the postseason. In professional sports, no matter what sport we're talking about, it changes a little bit. The intensity ratchets up because there's more urgency. It's win or go home. The depth doesn't necessarily come into play as much because you don't have back-to-backs. So I think this is a situation where you have to look at the team that has the players that can have an impact and dictate the complexion of the game, but also the team that has the experience and the grit in the postseason. And to me, that's the Houston Rockets.
See, I actually look at that the opposite way. I know Milwaukee has not gotten out of the first round, but they went to 7 games last season against the Boston Celtics. The previous 2 years, I think the first year they got in the playoffs, they got knocked out by Chicago. The second year, it was a hard-fought 6 or 7 game series against Toronto, and it's the same core of players. So you got Giannis Antetokounmpo, you got Chris Middleton, now Eric Bledsoe in his second. It's the same group of guys. If
they've been together, and they've been together in the playoffs multiple years. They just don't have the history and experience of success. Because of when the Bucks would have to play the Warriors, I think the Bucks have the profile of every not just good NBA champion, great NBA champion. They have the profile of a team that most years is the big favorite. You have the league MVP, even if I would have been a close vote, but I wouldn't have voted for him, but he's going to win it. You have a top 3 offense, you have the #1 defense, you have depth, you have an excellent coach, you have an amazing home court advantage. You are 15-5 as a team against the next 7 best teams or 6 best teams in the league. They check every box. But the Warriors, by the time they play the Bucks, if that is the matchup, they will have 6 weeks of playoff mode. They will be fully, now an injury changes things obviously, but they will have been fully engaged, and I think they will have to have played their best basketball to get past Houston. One of the things that I think works in Houston's favor is the Warriors clearly are a team that has a switch and can flip it. But it's tough. Usually you flip it by the conference finals, and that's what happened last year, and took them a bit. And then come the NBA finals, Cavs were overmatched. The Warriors were also playing their best basketball. The Warriors aren't even going to have to turn the switch on in the first round of the playoffs because they didn't draw OKC. They didn't draw the Spurs. So are they going to be fully locked in round one so they are hitting the ground running in round two? Or could it be a series where Houston steals game one and now they have home court back? Now, I agree with you. The Warriors are the drastic favorite as they've been all year. And I don't know that the Rockets would beat the Bucks in the finals if they get there, because I think the Bucks are as good as you're talking about. But to beat the Warriors, I think you need experience against them, and you need to be able to hit, 14 threes in a quarter, and the Rockets can do that.
All right, we'll take a break there. Coming up, back to football. Are the Packers completely wasting Aaron Rodgers' talents? That's ahead on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, hanging out with Chris Canty and Coach Mangini.
What up,
I feel
Coach?
like we're going to talk some basketball this segment,
Yeah,
so
good.
it'll be
or golf either.
or golf would be good
Little
for you
golf.
too. We'll start with hockey though.
Great.
All signs point to the New York Football
NHL playoffs
Giants
opened up.
starting the season with Eli Manning under center, but also yes, they should be looking for more help under center, and seemingly are. Yesterday they hosted top quarterback prospect Kyler Murray. We didn't have to dig too deep to figure out that he was interviewing with the Giants. Kyler posted this incredible picture of the Giants facility on the gram.
Coach loves that.
It's a great picture. Coach, should the Giants trade up to get Kyler Murray?
I think if you have a conviction on a quarterback, it's worth whatever price you have to pay. But you have to have that conviction. And I don't know if the Giants do. I think the Giants feel still very strongly about Eli Manning and the things that he can do. And to some degree, I agree with that approach. Look, he's won 2 Super Bowls. He's done a lot of good things. I think they have done some things in the offseason that are positive, and I could understand why they would continue down this path and not look to leverage the organization to go get a quarterback unless they sincerely believe that this is the guy for the next 15 to 20 years. And it's hard for me to imagine that they have that conviction. Gettleman, when he was in Carolina, wasn't afraid to trade. He actually had the fewest draft picks of any GM during that time period, but most of the trades were in later rounds. They weren't with the first-round draft picks, so it's hard for me to think that he would give away the volume you'd have to move up.
Just real quick, when Coach says he had the fewest picks, it's because he would package picks to move up.
To move up.
So you'd package
Gavin Funchess, guys like that.
And it would be a lot of, I give you my third and my fifth for your second-round pick.
Not the first-round
not
blockbuster.
multiple first-round picks to move up to the top
Which you'd
5.
have to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, here's the thing, Coach, and you're absolutely right. You can't move up unless you have a conviction or unless you think this guy is going to be a franchise quarterback. But at some point, Pat Shurmur and Dave Gettleman have had to find the quarterback of the future for the Giants. Eli Manning's 38 years old, and he's going into a contract season. So, I mean, if you think back to when the organization made the decision to draft him, they leveraged the franchise. They gave up future first-round draft picks to get Eli Manning. And that swap what they had with Phillip Rivers. So that actually happened, and it worked out for the Giants. But I think that just goes to show you the importance of the quarterback position. So I think this is doing due diligence on Kyler Murray. I mean, if you're going to be interested in trying to find a quarterback, and we have to believe that Dave Gettleman is seriously considering that, seeing as how he said at the draft he would think that the Kansas City Chiefs model would be the ideal model for the Giants in terms of having a veteran quarterback groom a young quarterback. But, I mean, if you're doing that, then it makes sense to have Kyler Murray in the building. To me, the big story with Kyler Murray visiting the Giants is that the Arizona Cardinals might be open for business with the #1 overall pick. Because if Kyler Murray and his agent know that Arizona's going to draft him, then why would he be going on a visit with the Giants? That part of it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, they were in Arizona earlier this week meeting with the Cardinals, and Kyler Murray's agent happens to be the agent of Cliff Kingsbury. So if they had the idea that the Cardinals are going to go ahead and make this decision, and there's no question about it, then I don't know that Kyler Murray would be in Meadowlands this weekend.
I think there's a little, I know what you know, but do you know what I know going on here? I think the situation is the Cardinals know they're drafting Kyler Murray. They are trying to put out to the league, we might not draft Kyler Murray, so the trade market for Josh Rosen doesn't tank entirely. Like, that happens to be what I think's going on here. But on this specific note, should the Giants give up the 6, the 17, and more of future firsts it would probably take to move up to #1 to get Kyler Murray? No, I don't think they should. Should they spend the 6th overall pick on a quarterback? If Dwayne Haskins is there, unequivocally, absolutely yes. Is this offseason a total debacle if they come out of it with no plan post Eli Manning? Yes, unequivocally, 100%. Eli Manning's 2 Super Bowls are part of the reason he, and really almost the entirety of the reason, he might one day be a Hall of Famer. They have no application whatsoever to the Giants in 2019, in my eyes. Since 2013, here's the quarterbacks with at least 4 losing seasons. Derek Carr, Blake Bortles, he's not a starter. Jay Cutler, he's out of football. Eli Manning, he just keeps getting run back out there.
Yep.
I'll give you another one. Of teams with the most losing seasons since 2013, only the Browns have more than the Giants. They have started 13 different quarterbacks. The teams with the same number of losing seasons, Raiders have started 5 quarterbacks, Jags have started 4, the Bucs have started 5, and the New York Giants, who it's Eli and 1 game of Geno Smith that got a coach fired. So, they have to use this opportunity and use the fact that Dwayne Haskins' draft stock seems to be falling. All of a sudden, people like Drew Lock and Daniel Jones for reasons that I think I have an idea why some people might like them more than Dwayne Haskins, because it sure as hell ain't their play on the field. But if Haskins is there at 6, if you don't have to trade up to get Haskins, because my concern for the Giants would be you've got to give multiple first-round picks to move up to get Haskins.
Yes.
And that could be a tough sell. But if he's there at 6, to me, that's a no-brainer.
Well, I love the way that we just talk about this absolute certainty. Like, we're going to draft this quarterback, and he's absolutely going to be the player that's going to take the organization to the next level for the next 10 to 15 years. If this was an exact science, then we wouldn't have these conversations every season. And the idea that Arizona has made their decision, and they're definitely going to go the way they go, I don't think that's set in stone either.
Agreed.
There's conversation that happens in the building all the way up to the draft, and you've got to get the owner on board with those decisions too. So if I'm sitting there as the owner of the Arizona Cardinals, and my GM made a mistake on the head coach, and he made a mistake on the quarterback that we traded up for, and now I'm going to come back and say, okay, well, go ahead and make the decision on the next quarterback.
After I let you make the decision on the next coach.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's an element of, let me make sure that this is right for the organization, because he's staying.
Right.
The owner's not going anywhere. And for we want to kill Eli consistently, but it's a group effort.
Yeah.
And organizationally, everybody is accountable for the results they've had over that time.
Who are the options the Giants have? Who are the quarterback options the Giants have this offseason? If you talk about guys like Josh Rosen and maybe Dwayne Haskins or Kyler Murray, who are the potentials that they could even be going after?
Well, I think those guys are on the table. Josh Rosen, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones. I know there's been some interest with him, having Chris Mara at Daniel Jones's pro day, and then them contacting people that have worked with Daniel Jones, Cutcliffe, and then, of course, Daniel Jones's high school coach Larry McNulty. But, I mean, this situation right now is the Giants doing their due diligence because they recognize that they have to make this decision sooner rather than later. I can't see them going through another draft and passing on the quarterback. They're projecting as many as 4 quarterbacks could go in the first round this year. I mean, so you mean to tell me that the Giants made the decision to pass on four quarterbacks last year because they didn't have a chance to draft Baker Mayfield. He was number 1 overall. So you passed on 4 quarterbacks last year and going to pass on potentially 4 quarterbacks this year?
Twice. They'd have to pass on them twice, by the way, because they got that pick for Odell. Like, it would be. I couldn't fathom it. And here are those 4 guys. And this is for the Giants and the league as a whole. If anyone takes either of the last 2, Locke or Jones, over either of the first 2, they should be investigated. This is, I know there is no exact science in the draft. I get it. But Kyler, I understand why some teams would say, I'm not going to take the risk on the shortest first-round quarterback ever. Haskins checks every single box. Now, to Coach's point that the draft isn't an exact science, 100%. Why are the Patriots one of the best teams at this? Because they know it, and they just accumulate picks. They say, we don't have the lottery numbers, so let's get as many tickets as possible. It's a smart way to go about it. It's the argument for trading Odell Beckham, even though I wouldn't have done it. We need as many shots at this as possible. I get that. So there is no certainty about the draft. There is certainty in this. Eli Manning is not your quarterback in 3 years. Eli Manning is almost assuredly not your quarterback in 2 years. And some would say it's certain Eli Manning shouldn't be your quarterback this year. There is certainty there. And to say everyone's accountable, I'd love if the Giants ran the organization where everyone's accountable. It appears to me they run the organization that everyone's accountable except for number 10. And that has to stop in this year's draft.
All right, let's break there. Coming up, are the Boston Celtics in jeopardy of getting bounced in the first round? That's next on First Things First.
Speaking of jeopardy, have you been watching this guy?
Everybody, you just hate Eli.
I don't hate
He
Eli.
does, doesn't he? Tell us how you really feel about it.
Back here with Sir Kustok, we're going viral. So a recent player poll voted Draymond Green the most overrated player in the NBA, tied with Russell Westbrook. I guess you could say this rubbed Steph Curry the wrong way. Steph commented, "Who are these 109 players? Can't be anybody that's actually touched the floor and been in front of those two. Good luck." Clown emoji.
I didn't love that Russ was voted the most overrated player in the league.
Shocked.
I think he's the most scrutinized great player other than LeBron, certainly by folks on shows like this. And I'm really surprised that Russ's colleagues, at least some of them, would agree with some of the media scrutiny that he's a stat chaser when they have to deal with him on a night-to-night basis and when they see how hard he goes on a night-to-night basis.
That will forever boggle my mind because Russ is one of the guys who continues to play at 110% every single night, and I would think that the NBA players would value that. And even with Draymond Green, I mean, I appreciate Steph sticking up for his teammate. That's exactly what you should do. I think sometimes, though, with players that are talked about so much and the small value that Draymond Green has brought to the or the different intangibles that he's brought to the team. I don't know if some players there's jealousy.
Who do you think to be overrated? Who do you think the most overrated player in the NBA
I mean, I'm going to pile on him again. I think Nikola Jokic is a very good all-star. But this whole idea that he's an MVP candidate, he was at one point very, very underrated.
Yeah.
And he was so underrated he became overrated, and we're about to see that in the postseason this year. That's my eyes. I think there wasn't a negative question in this player poll. Like, which NBA players you dislike the most? So I think some guys don't like Russ, some guys don't like Draymond, and they use this as an opportunity to chop him down a bit. That would be my guess.
But Jokic, I think Jokic is going to have a breakout postseason.
Oh, you better do it in the 6 games he's going to be able to play in against
I think
the Spurs.
we're going to see, but I think that's going to really test what type of player he is.
Excuse me. All right, moving on. The NBA playoffs are finally upon us. The Celtics and Pacers have one of the more interesting matchups in the East. It's been a season of ups and downs for Boston. Kyrie has been the consistent up, but team chemistry has been the consistent down. Vegas had this team winning 59 games when the season started. They won 49. However, GM Danny Ainge is feeling optimistic.
We're playing our best basketball. We have good depth to make up for some of these, for Marcus's loss, but I feel like our team is in a good spot. The playoffs are a different animal, and I think that it's like a fresh start, a reset button, and we're excited about it. But I do believe that the playoffs, with it and because of its elimination type of play, just by nature gives you more resolve, just to fight through the. Whereas sometimes in the regular season, it's like you got a game tomorrow night and you got a game next week, and so you don't have that same resolve often. And I think that our team has shown under Coach Stevens' leadership. I think that we've played with great resolve in the last few years, and I think that the team will have that in the playoffs this year.
Danny mentioned being without Marcus. Marcus Smart will miss the first 2 rounds of the playoffs with that oblique injury. What do you think about the Celtics, where they are now? Do they have what it takes to go on a run?
I think we need to define run. This is a team that's been to the Eastern Conference Finals for the past 2 years. Do I think they're going to get there? No, I don't. I think the first series for them will be interesting, matching up against the Pacers, a team that's been a tremendous story throughout the course of the year. When they lost Victor Oladipo at the start of the season, the fact that they're still in this position now and in that 5 seed, something to be said about the connectivity of this team, the grit they play with, just how hard they have worked to put themselves in this position. Boston, I have a hard time believing that once they get to that second round, they're going to be able to, if they do get past that Milwaukee Bucks team. when we talk so much about the Golden State Warriors, what do we always talk about? Who's the best player? Who's the most important player? Right. I think for the Boston Celtics, Al Horford and Marcus Smart are their most important people. They are the lifeblood of that group. They make everything go on both ends of the floor. I don't think that Marcus Smart is going to be the difference in the Celtics getting past the Pacers. I do think that they will be able to beat Indiana. But I think when you talk about a long run, he's a player that factors in. So
the Celtics should be very familiar with the team they're about to play in the first round, the Indiana Pacers. Yeah. Because the Indiana Pacers this year are the Boston Celtics of last year. A team that went into the season with some legitimate expectations after an impressive playoff performance the previous year. For the Pacers, it was just one round, but it was 7 games against the Cavs. Took LeBron James buzzer beater to really save that series. Who is without their best player, and everyone thought they were going to fall apart. And then were able to not only stay afloat, but thrive without that best player, and is now playing a team in the postseason that has the best player on the court. Just like the Celtics did last year. This is everything the Celtics dealt with last year reversed. They lost Kyrie, they go against Giannis, all of this, right? And the more connected team won in a hard-fought 7-game series. The Boston Celtics right now, I understand they're without Marcus Smart. And I understand he does so many of the intangibles, and Boston folks got very mad at me because I said yesterday that going into the season, he was your 6th or 7th most important guy. But going into the season, if we were ranking Celtics that the Celtics fans were excited about, Kyrie, Tatum was going to be an all-star. Yeah. Gordon Hayward, back from injury. Al Horford, Mr. Consistent, does everything, whether it shows up in the box score or not. And Jaylen Brown after the playoffs he had. There's 5 guys. And then there's Marcus Smart. Now, Marcus Smart this year learned how to shoot threes, and credit to him, he was an awful three-point shooter for his entire career, and he took them until this year. And this year he was actually quite good, around 35, 36%. Yeah. But if the Celtics are anything like they were supposed to be, Marcus Smart cannot be the reason you lose to the Indiana Pacers. And if they are like anything they are supposed to be, would the Celtics have taken a Bucks series in the second round going into the year? Of course. Now, they would have thought they're going to be the 1, and the Bucks are going to be the 4, but there is an element of recreation of history about who this team was supposed to be and the importance of this season. If the Celtics can upset Milwaukee and get to the conference finals, they'll be playing their best basketball of the season. They will be probably a pick-em against Toronto or Philly to make the NBA Finals. If that happens, Kyrie might stay. If Kyrie stays, you will trade for Anthony Davis. You will go into next season as the favorites in the Eastern Conference. If they struggle against Atlanta and then get bounced in short order against Indiana, and then get bounced in short order by Milwaukee, or God forbid, if they lose to the Pacers, Kyrie is gone. Anthony Davis, they won't put Tatum on the block. Anthony Davis isn't coming there. And then, a decade removed almost from the Pierce-KG trade, what are you? You're a team building around Jason Tatum and Gordon Hayward is what you are.
Well, and you just laid out a multitude of options that could happen given what goes down this postseason. And that, to me, is in these guys' heads. Yes. They've been thinking about this. It's been discussed, obviously, ad nauseum. We've been talking about Kyrie Irving and his free agency situation, but just the variety of guys whose contracts are up, who are uncertain about if they are a part of the future plan for Boston. And the great, you mentioned and compare them to Indiana this season, what they were last season. Their greatest attribute was the way in which they were so connected. And so I believe for that reason, the fact that they've been so fragmented throughout the course of this year.
That they're not just going to turn it back.
That's not a team that I look and say they're going to be able to flip the switch.
And I'm very excited to watch Kyrie because we've never seen Kyrie in a single playoff game without LeBron James. Now, we have seen him be amazing in the biggest moments that exist in the NBA. Game 7 of the NBA Finals. People forget to get to Game 7. Yeah, LeBron dropped 41. Kyrie dropped 41 right alongside him in Game 6 of those NBA Finals. He has been spectacular in the biggest moments. But before LeBron got to Cleveland, they never even sniffed 35 wins. And then last year in Boston, unfortunately, he got hurt. I want to see Kyrie as the best player on the court in a playoff series, which he might be a top 10 guy. There's not another top 35 guy on the Pacers. I want to see what he does because What we were told last year was the Celtics couldn't win on the road because they didn't have Kyrie. They didn't have their all-star. They didn't have their closer. They got him now. I want to see how this goes, and I would be, just because I'm interested in the storylines, I would be very interested in having all of these clips I've been saying about the Celtics all year tweeted back to me over the next 6 weeks while they become the team they were supposed to be. I fear for Boston fans, they're going to be what they've been all year. A disconnected, slightly unhappy, good but not great team that is going to struggle against any of the other good teams, much less the great teams.
Well, if they want to change the narrative, they are running out of time as the playoffs get set to start. Take a break. Coming up, which former Steeler will have a better season next year? AB or L. Bell? We'll discuss next on First Things First. This weekend, we're under the lights on Saturday night as Kyle Busch looks for his third consecutive win at Richmond Raceway. It all starts 7:30 Eastern tomorrow on Fox and the Fox Sports app. Back here with Chris Canty and Coach Mangini. We'll get to Aaron Rodgers in a second, but first, a couple of highlights from last night. Team USA Junior Basketball, Isaac Okoro with the alley-oop.
At the Blazers practice facility, Bruce Pearl with another star recruit down at Auburn.
Some even younger players here. Check out the no-look pass for the easy lay-in.
Hey, 19.
Sweet.
19 in the white. No, forget the pass. Let's watch 19 in the white. Because what are you doing, kiddo? I mean, just arms down, just watching.
Nick, he's a scorer. He's not a defender.
I mean, he's
getting back on offense.
His whole play.
He could move at all.
I mean, his guy is the one that went to the basket. He's just watching. Come on, kiddo.
Coach, I'll get you back on the offensive end. I got you, Coach.
Finally,
Speaking of a strictly
Japanese
offensive
B-League.
player.
Let's talk about how there was no NBA last night. Nice robot draining a shot from deep.
Man, until the robots take over, what they're able to do is just funny and fun to watch.
But if you get the math right, and the physics of it, then he'll
Jenna,
hit
you
all
have
day.
trouble remembering what day it is.
Why?
Just, I don't know why, but you do. And now you're like, if you can just get the physics of creating a basketball robot, it's easy. Yeah, the hard part is the physics.
You just get those, if the physics worked out, you're good.
Once we get past the physics part of it, it's all downhill.
Hindsight wasn't the smartest comment.
Push machine learning forward.
Anyway, time for drawing a blank. Yesterday, Kyler Murray visited with the Giants, and while he's at the top of most mock drafts, not everyone is convinced he is the best quarterback available. Chris Kane, I'll start with you. The quarterback you would most want in the NFL draft is blank.
It'd have to be Dwayne Haskins. I've seen that style of quarterback have success in our league. I mean, he's the prototype in terms of what you're looking for: height, weight, the arm talent. I mean, the throws that he can make. He can layer throws. He can throw off platform. He has functional mobility. He can move around a little bit in the pocket, maybe get outside of the pocket and extend some plays. You're not going to run no read option with him, but, I mean, he's got enough where he can be able to get away from pressure and deliver the ball down the field.
Yeah, I like Kyler Murray, and I don't love his height. Obviously, I think it's going to be an issue, but I really do like the catchable balls that he throws, and I was impressed by the patience that he has in the pocket and his overall decision-making. I think those things are the things that stand out for me.
I think Kyler has the most upside, but the height scares me too much, and Haskins' upside is very close, and he's so much of a safer bet. I'll go Haskins. Nearly 5,000 yards, played in a big-time conference against big-time defenses and set every passing record, not just in Ohio State history, but in Big Ten history. 50 touchdowns, 70% completions, saved them a bunch of times this year, and in his brief appearances, his redshirt freshman year when he had to step in for J.T. Barrett. Dwayne Haskins is the closest thing, let me say it like this, to a sure thing at the quarterback position.
It's a lock. Nick Wright has locked it in.
That's a different show.
A lot has changed in Pittsburgh over the last couple of seasons. The Triple Bs are now just a single B. Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, both have new football homes. Kenny, the former Steeler that'll have the best season with his new team is blank.
I'm going Le'Veon Bell as long as he leaves his rap career in the offseason and focuses on football once we get to the regular season. But, I mean, in terms of the usage, like, he's going to get a lot of touches. I mean, going into last year, there was no other player in NFL history that averaged more yards from scrimmage per game than Le'Veon Bell. So, I mean, I like the fact that they got him to be able to take some pressure off their young quarterback, Sam Darnold. They also made the trade this offseason to bring over Kelechi Osemele from the Oakland Raiders, the offensive guard. That's going to help the offensive line, which in turn is going to help Lev Bell.
I really like Antonio Brown. He's so hard to defend. He's so uniquely talented. I like Derek Carr. I think he gets a bad rep, and I think John Gruden's going to do a really good job with him. Are there going to be some management issues? Yeah, but Antonio's motivated. He's in a really good situation, and I think he's got a chance for growth.
If you'd asked me this 3 weeks ago, I'd have said Antonio Brown. But he's been so erratic and so just obviously crazy over the last few weeks. I'm going to go with the sure thing, the running back. I think he's going to be fresh. I believe the year off is going to help him this season after being not only the most productive per-game running back in NFL history, but the most used per-game running back in NFL history. I like what the Jets are trying to do, and we know who's going to be handing him the ball. I'm not certain we know who's going to be throwing the ball to Antonio Brown because I'm not a huge fan of Derek Carr. I'm not sure Gruden is either. And I'll be honest, I'm just not really a fan of Antonio Brown right now, so I'm going with Le'Veon Bell. I'm being totally transparent about this.
Let's move on to the NFC East now. The Cowboys went 7-2 last season after trading for Amari Cooper. Some saying they're the favorites to win the NFC East again this next season, this coming season. However, Carson Wentz and the Eagles may have something to say about that. Chris Canty, the best team in the NFC East is blank.
I'm going to go with the Cowboys, and to me, this is a two-team race. I'm going to scratch off the Washington Redskins and the New York Giants because of their quarterback situations that could change after the draft. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, it's between the Eagles and the Cowboys, and I like what the Cowboys have shown me. And, of course, Dak Prescott, I mean, we've seen what he's done when he has Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield with him 2 out of the 3 years that he's been the starting quarterback. They've won the division. I like the Cowboys.
I like the Eagles. As challenging as last year was because they were coming off the Super Bowl and they had to understand what it was like in that position, they showed resilience. They were able to climb out of some problems early, and I think that's going to serve them well going into this season. This is the year that they have a real chance to take an additional jump based off the experience that they had last year.
I agree with you entirely, Kenny, that it's definitely a two-team race, that this is the Cowboys and Eagles are in a good position because I think there are two teams in this division you can cross out. When I have my schedule grid come out, we can just cross out Washington and the Giants before the year like you love, Coach. I'm also going to go with the Cowboys. To me, the Cowboys are the safer bet. We know what they do well. We know that their team's going to be almost the exact same team they trotted out there last year, that once they got Amari Cooper, played very well. I think the Eagles are going to miss Michael Bennett, and I'm worried about Carson Wentz's ability to play 16 games.
Yes.
And Nick Foles isn't there anymore. So what will they do if he does miss a stretch of time, and what will the backup quarterback situation be? It won't be as good as the one they have with Nick Foles, so I'll say the Cowboys, even though it's very close.
All right, last, the Cleveland Browns. They've been the darlings of the offseason. They hope to keep the positive momentum going to make their first playoff appearance since 2002. Chris Canty, the best team in the AFC North is blank.
I think it's close, but I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens, and that's really because of their defense. I mean, when you look at them, they're one of the best pass defenses in the National Football League, and they can create turnovers. So I think the Baltimore Ravens, if they continue to lean on what their identity has been, which is being able to play really good defense, complement that with being able to run the football, whether it's Lamar Jackson or Mark Ingram, I think that's what the Ravens' strengths are. I think we know who they're going to be coming into 2019. I'm going Ravens.
I like the Steelers, and I like the Steelers because as much drama as they had this season, they were still able to finish up 9-6-1. And to me, it's the quarterback. I really believe in Ben Roethlisberger, and I think sometimes with these situations, it's addition by subtraction, and you get a locker room that's all working and pushing in the same direction. To me, they know how to win. They've shown that they can win consistently, and someone's got to beat them.
Why do I love Coach Mangini? Because I bet on talent, and I bet on the Cleveland Browns. Come on. I think they're going to have the best quarterback in the division in Baker Mayfield. I know they have the best wide receiver in the division. I think they have the best defense in the division. I think that what they are
Wasn't
going
their
to...
defense 30th last season?
Yeah.
The Steelers were like 6th.
I understand all of that. I get
they
that.
must have made some gigantic.
Odell
Beckham's going to play corner.
I was told by a wise man that the season doesn't begin where the last one ended. That it's a totally new team, a totally new group. They certainly have the highest level defensive talent in the division.
You were the wise man.
Baltimore. I know they brought in Earl Thomas, but they had some losses in the secondary. I like Cleveland. I think Cleveland's going to be an 11 or 12 win team. I love the fact that they're going to have Kareem Hunt for the second half of the season after having Nick Chubb for the first half, or I guess the entire season. I think Cleveland's the Vegas favorite, and I think they should be. I think they're one of the 3 best teams in the AFC.
All right, take a break. Coming up, despite coaches' claim that they'll win the division, will the Steelers' locker room implode this season? We discuss next on First Things First. Back here with Chris Canty and Coach Mangini, we're going viral. The Jets revealed their new Gotham green jerseys earlier this week. You could say New Yorkers are excited about the new uniforms, releasing this hype video with Jamal Adams.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Hey, getting after it.
How come your New York Giants don't do cool stuff like this, Chris Canty?
Stop it. Well, at least we've won a championship in the last 50 years.
Oh my gosh,
Look,
shade.
it's gang
you're the
green,
one that started it.
It's good stuff.
But it's really cool, though. The Jets, Chris Herndon, Robbie Anderson dropped by our radio studio and gave me a personalized 99 Jets jersey. So that was pretty cool.
That is
Shout out to Chris and Robbie. Appreciate you guys.
What's your thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, there's no hype video when I was there. It's a little
There
more,
was no hype video when you were there?
a little more old school. We were working on the playbook, but whatever.
Wow.
I mean, different.
Well, Coach, look good, play good, right?
Different folks, yeah.
The Giants would do a video like that, but they traded away their best dancer, so now they can't.
Yeah.
Time for your AT&T wake-up call. Yesterday, the Giants hosted top quarterback prospect Kyler Murray. We didn't have to dig too far to figure out that. Kyler posted a picture of the Giants facility on Instagram. All right, Coach, should the Giants trade up to get Kyler Murray?
To me, it's whether they have the conviction. If they love him, if they think that this is a guy that can take over for Eli, if they think this is the guy that can get him back to where they were, then absolutely. I think this is more a case of them doing their research in case he falls, in case an opportunity comes up where they're looking at him and they have an opportunity to get him.
I think their best case scenario is that they don't have to trade up at all and Dwayne Haskins is there at 6. If I was going to trade up, I would be talking to the New York Jets to see if they would like to move down from 3 to ensure you get Dwayne Haskins. I think Kyler's going 1.
Yeah, let me tell you what won't happen. The Jets and the Giants make a draft day trade. They're just not going to do that. But, I mean, listen, if you have a conviction on Kyler Murray, then you absolutely go get him. But, I mean, the Giants don't control their own fate as far as that situation is concerned because Arizona's got the #1 pick.
All right, moving on. Mark Murphy, the president and CEO of the Green Bay Packers, responded to a story about the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. Murphy says there are a lot of half-truths in the article, and he's hoping Rodgers uses it for motivation. Nick, how do you think Rodgers responds this season?
I think he's going to go back to MVP form. I think Aaron Rodgers understands that whether or not what happened over the last half decade is mostly his fault, partially his fault, or almost not at all his fault, what happens over the next half decade is going to be laid at his feet, fairly or unfairly. He's going to be motivated, and if coachability was an issue in the past, he's going to be as coachable as he ever has been going into this year because they fired the last head coach ostensibly because you guys didn't get along. You got to get along with this one.
Yeah, it's all on him now, and making the change that they made gives him significantly more power, and what he decides to do with that power is going to control the destiny of the team. And if he embraces this change, if he's out in front of this change, I think they have a chance to like you said, he has a chance to return to an MVP level.
All right, moving on. The Steelers are back in the news because, of course, they are. Offensive lineman Raymond Foster has had enough of all the drama between current and former Steelers. The 10-year vet issued a message, and it went like this. Moving forward, any former player or affiliate of the Steelers who has an issue with anyone still in the locker room, please contact me or Marquise Pouncey or anyone else you feel you can talk to. These media takes might give y'all good traffic on your social media outlets, but the guys still in that locker room who y'all still know personally have to answer for those comments. Enough. Chill. Business is one thing, but let's keep it at a minimum for the guys who have to answer for those comments moving forward. Kenny, I'll start with you. What's it going to be like in Pittsburgh's locker room after everything that has gone down this offseason?
Well, I mean, listen, they're thinking that it's addition by subtraction, just being able to get rid of the guys that were taking away from what the team was trying to do, right? Guys that weren't necessarily on board with the team's agenda, guys that had their own interests at heart. But when I hear those comments from Ramon Foster, I think back to what happened earlier before the start of the regular season when the media put a microphone in front of his face and he was commenting on Lev Bell's situation with his contract and that standoff between him and their general manager, Kevin Colbert.
When he said, and I quote, My mom died. I went to the funeral, came to camp the next day. Al Villanueva has seen people die and has come and given his all to the team. It's a little bit tiresome. I'm tired of the antics. That was Ramon Foster on, at the time, teammate Le'Veon Bell not being there.
And he also talked about Le'Veon Bell's money. The offer that the Pittsburgh Steelers had on the table for him being substantially more than he had made to that point in his career.
You're right.
And that's one of the cardinal rules that you don't break in the National Football League. You don't talk about somebody else's money. So in that situation, you chose to go that route and make something that should have been kept behind closed doors public. But now when other guys that are no longer in your locker room are doing that, it doesn't necessarily feel good. You feel like you're in the crosshairs because you're one of the leaders in a locker room that has questionable leadership.
Everybody gets frustrated with the way that New England deals with the media and the blandness of their answers and the blandness of the press conferences. But what that does is that helps to avoid distractions. And I know you don't like that word distraction, but it's real. It's real. When you start talking about other people's issues or issues that are happening internally, everybody has work to do. Everybody has to deal with that instead of dealing with what's important. And that's the task at hand or the game that's ahead. And to ask guys that aren't with the team not to talk about it when you felt comfortable talking about issues and creating problems internally, I think it's a little disingenuous.
Yeah, and when Ramon himself has, or at least has had in the past, and I think still has, a weekly radio show on The Fan in Pittsburgh, the same place Ben had his radio show. Now, listen, I understand, even though I think the hypocrisy is real in this, he was trying to address what was a very serious allegation by Rashard Mendenhall.
Yeah.
Rashard Mendenhall went out and tweeted yesterday, listen, the problem with Big Ben and AB is Big Ben's a racist.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Big Ben doesn't like black players. All the black players know it. Anyone's being real. So that is, and Rashard Mendenhall sent out that tweet, goes on about his day, lets that bomb explode elsewhere. And so I do understand why, even if Ramon Foster knows, I haven't always practiced what I'm preaching here. If he feels like that is an unfair charge to levy, he wants to. I think he didn't address it directly because it would have drawn more attention to it.
Sure.
But he addressed it basically saying, and it's not terrible advice, the part of guys do like to be able to, when they're 50, bring their kids back. You know what I mean?
Every athlete wants a home post-playing career.
Absolutely. I worked with a guy that, I'm not going to mention his name, but I worked with a guy who you coached once, who one time on the radio in Houston making a joke, made a joke about a former teammate that really, it was taken so poorly, it made it very difficult for him to go back to celebrations with that team. It made it, and so I think it's not bad advice by Ramon Foster, but I also think it speaks to the bigger overall storyline with Pittsburgh, which is, even though Le'Veon's not there anymore, because he wasn't there all last year, even though Antonio's gone, this is going to be a dramatic team. It doesn't mean they can't be good.
On the field or off the field?
There's going to be off-the-field drama. I don't know what drama is like on the field. Like, I don't even know how I would quantify that. What I mean is they have a polarizing, empowered quarterback, and they have a coach who I believe to be an outstanding coach, but a coach who, at least up to this point in his career, hasn't exactly ruled with an iron fist. And when you have those two things, you're going to have more of these types of stories. They don't have the media policy that New England has. They have quite the opposite of that.
They're fueled by it. This is their dysfunction, and they found a way to work within that system of the dysfunction. They win, save for last year maybe. They win with this type of dysfunction within their organization. I don't know why we're all surprised that this is continuing to go on. I know what you always say. Different families, different, the different way they carry themselves.
Yeah, they've had challenging players for as long as I can remember. There's been guys that have bucked the system. There's been guys that have been on the fringe, and they've always handled it well, and they've always operated in that space. Now, to me, drama is relative. I think that the amount of drama versus last season, it's going to be hard to achieve that level. Yeah. To me, that it's going to be much less than that, and expectations are different. And those two things give them an opportunity, to me, to sneak up on a lot of people.
Well, the one thing I will say, Coach, I think that it's going to be hard to get back to having that same level of drama in that locker room, but I don't know that the expectations are different for the Steelers organization in 2019 than they were in 2018. That's one of those teams that looks at it and they try to compete for a championship every single year.
I agree.
And so now you have a higher degree of difficulty because you're not as talented as you were last year. But the thought being, when you don't have as much talent, that this team has eliminated the distractions, and everybody can get on the same page. The chemistry of the team overall can be better, and the result of that would be more wins on the football field. I think that's how they have to look at it. I don't think the expectations for the Steelers have changed.
Yeah, I agree with you. The internal expectations haven't changed, but I think the external expectations.
You got folks like me picking the Browns.
Yeah, that
Vegas says the Browns.
Yeah, they're not the same team. But they've got the greatest thing there in terms of they've got the force multiplier in Ben Roethlisberger.
Sure.
And giving him an environment that, and it's not adding a weapon. To me, it's about the environment. And if you create an environment where he can continue to thrive, he's going to make other 6th-round draft picks look really good. He's going to make other running backs look really good because everybody's defending the pass. We talk about Le'Veon Bell. I mean, people are going to try to stop him. He doesn't have Ben Roethlisberger to give him 7-man boxes.
All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, talk some basketball. Will the Lakers be able to land Kawhi Leonard this summer? We'll discuss that next on First Things First. FS1's your destination for today's best sports shows. Tune in for the biggest personalities on the biggest stories. We get you started right here on First Things First. Catch it on Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern, only on FS1. Back here with Chris Canty and Sarah Kustok, we are going viral. Carmelo Anthony and the Banana Boat crew were in Brooklyn Wednesday to celebrate Dwayne Wade's last career game. And the party was just getting started at Barclays, spilling over to a club in New York City. And I must say, I feel like this is the kind of environment I would have seen you and Cece at. Like this
Well, listen, Cece's not as much of a, maybe in his previous iterations of his life.
I got you.
Now as Hall of Famer and 50.
Look, I think most people would feel like it was more natural to see you there than, say, if I was standing in the corner.
Oh, they wouldn't let you in.
I actually know this.
There's no way to stand in the corner of the club where you get denied entry at the door by the bouncer. This was a night, I will say, where the wake-up time of this radio or this television show, combined with me having to do the radio show at night, really bummed me out. Because that type of thing, I would have liked to make an appearance.
You wanted to get involved?
Absolutely. I feel like Sarah Kustok might have been in the background.
Yeah, what do you think, Sarah?
I've got.
Do you remember me there?
I'm disciplined. That environment at Barclays, though, was one of the most special things that I have ever seen. It was unbelievable.
And awesome. Wade doing his final jersey
with Carmelo
it made me a little sad.
For Mel, though, right? Because he's not getting that send-off that Dwayne Wade got or what LeBron James or Chris Paul will get.
And he was not able to. LeBron and CP got D. Wade's jersey when they played together in their last game. Carmelo didn't know his career was ending.
And the fact that Dwayne didn't even know those guys were coming.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
really
a real friendship amongst those players. That's special.
All right, back to the Lakers now. Now that GM Rob Pelinka was reportedly given Jeannie Buss's blessing to stay on, one of his first tasks will be to land a big free agent. Lakers are armed with a max salary cap slot, but they also have a coach who has underwhelmed and a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 6 seasons and a recently injured LeBron James. Yesterday, NBA insider Rick Bucher was on Undisputed and gave some insight into the Lakers' free agency plans.
I don't believe that this is Rob Pelinka's job and away we go. The referendum on Rob Pelinka will be this summer. And the big fish that Jeannie Buss wants is Kawhi Leonard.
Really?
If they get Kawhi Leonard, then I think that Rob, yes, has more power, he controls.
All right, we've thrown a lot of these names out of potentials who could fit into the system that they have there with LeBron and whether it works money-wise and everything. What about Kawhi Leonard, Nick? Should he be the Lakers' top priority?
I think he was the Lakers' top priority the moment they signed LeBron and that Paul George had re-signed with OKC. The discussion was not, oh, the Lakers will obviously trade for Anthony Davis. That popped up mid-season when Anthony Davis made his trade demand. We know Kawhi wants to be in Los Angeles. I believe from a basketball standpoint, he fits seamlessly with LeBron. He doesn't need the ball in his hands as much. He's not a big. The one part of Kawhi's game that's not elite is his passing ability. LeBron will be able to pass forever. Sure. He obviously can guard the other team's best wing when LeBron's not doing that at this point in his career. So, yes, we know We know Kawhi, if he leaves Toronto, is going to Los Angeles. We just don't know which team in Los Angeles. Now, is Rob Pelinka the best guy to recruit him? Are the Lakers in the best position to get him if they keep the status quo in the front office coaching staff? Those are different discussions. But I know some people would say, why not go after Kevin Durant? My partner Chris Carter made that point. I just think it's not realistic. I think Kevin Durant is not a 1 in 10 shot. I think he's a 1 in 100 shot, if not more. And so I wouldn't expend my energy there. I would have Kawhi and Kyrie as my 2 realistic A-list guys.
I also think so. I've called Toronto games kind of spread out throughout the course of the season, most recently about a week ago. And I'll say this, and I think Kawhi Leonard is a quiet individual. Not a lot of people are real close with him, and you never really know what a guy is thinking, especially with the postseason ahead, which will probably factor into his decisions. People in Toronto believe that he's staying. There are those around the organization that have high expectations that he will re-sign there. So I think it's important to look at what matters most to Kawhi, and I'm not sure that's something we know. Does he prioritize being in Los Angeles? Does he prioritize being in what Toronto is, a incredibly well-run organization with a lot of potential, and does he have a comfort level there? And then, of course, there's the Clippers, and that's been the LA team that we have talked about, over the last year, and have attached Kawhi Leonard because he may not be a superstar that cares as much about the cachet and the bright lights that the Laker organization brings.
Chris, is it not true the blueprint was set with the possibility of Kawhi staying when Paul George decided to stay in Oklahoma City?
Yes.
Once that happened, and I think Toronto thought, you know what, if it happened, well, let's bring him in for a year. We could convince him. No one in a million years thought Paul George was going to stay there, and they thought for sure he was in L.A. Do you think he has a good shot of coming to the Lakers, or do you see him staying in Toronto?
Well, I don't know whether or not he's going to stay in Toronto. I think if he does leave Toronto, he is going to L.A. It's just a matter of which L.A. franchise. Now, as far as Kawhi is concerned, I think how the playoffs unfold will go a long ways to determining whether or not he's going to stay there. How close they get to competing for a championship will determine whether or not he's going to make the decision to leave. But in looking at the situation, if you're Kawhi Leonard, why would you want to go to the Los Angeles Lakers, who have shown this dysfunction over the course of the 2018-2019 season? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. With all of the issues that have gone on behind the scenes in the front office, the friction between Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson stepping down, in an impromptu fashion before the season finale, nobody expected that to happen. And so if you're Kawhi Leonard looking at that situation, and then you couple that with the fact that LeBron James missed 27 games this season, and this is the first time that he's missed significant time with an injury, and he's in his mid-30s, there have to be serious questions about whether or not you can be competitive with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Well, so that last part, I totally disagree with whether or not you can be competitive with the Lakers. Why would you pick the Lakers over the Clippers? Because Kawhi plus LeBron on the Lakers makes them a top-of-the-page championship favorite. Adding Kawhi to this current Clippers roster makes them a championship contender.
Yes.
And so there's a difference between being the contender and one of the favorites. Now, and again, we are assuming this isn't a post-Kevin Durant Golden State world where we get back to our regular NBA homeostasis where 2 top-level players and a good team around you is enough. But this is one of those, Kawhi staying with Toronto would have other effects negatively on the Lakers that cannot be dismissed. Because you mentioned Paul George. Paul George was a rental, and then he wasn't. Kawhi Leonard was a rental. If he ends up not being a rental, then how many front offices this summer say, you know what, why don't we get in this Anthony Davis sweepstakes? Well, who cares that he says he's leaving? One of the reasons the Lakers have a realistic shot at Anthony Davis is not because they can create the best package of any team in the league. They can create the best package of any team that Anthony Davis has said he wants to go to.
Yes.
But if you're Chicago and you see Oklahoma City convinced Paul George to stay, Toronto convinced Kawhi to stay, Anthony Davis from here, we've got a nice young core, why don't we overpay for Anthony Davis? Because it won't just be a rental. And then the Lakers are grasping. because here are tiers of free agents. Like, it's very, and people could argue that Klay Thompson should be in the first tier, but aside from that, it's pretty clear cut. There's Kevin Durant, who is not going to the Lakers in my estimation. Kawhi Leonard, who we're discussing, and then Kyrie Irving is the X factor, who I believe is leaving Boston, but is leaning towards right here rather than out on the West Coast in LA. Klay Thompson, I'd be shocked if he leaves. Shocked. And now we're to, I think Kimba would be a good fit. I'm not as high on Jimmy Butler, and I think DeMarcus Cousins would be an awful basketball fit along with LeBron defensively. But you're running out of names now. Like, you're running out of actual top-level basketball players that can fill that max salary slot that the Lakers have so desperately kept
And I think
open.
that's the most important point, and it's very visible when we see that list and see those players up there. We don't know how many guys may stay with their own organizations, and when you start to check players off the list, there's not necessarily a lot of those top-tier guys that will potentially be available.
And the other question is, how many of those guys want to come and play alongside LeBron James? Because LeBron James plays a very specific brand of basketball, and that's the one thing that we don't have an answer to, but we're going to find out this offseason.
Well, I think that's for Jeannie Buss and for the Lakers organization. Yeah, you need to do your due diligence in making sure you're selecting the best candidate to run this operation, but you can't just dilly-dally with your time, because these free agents are going to want to see exactly who's in place, who's going to be running the organization, what does the coaching staff look like. I mean, there's a lot of factors that those players care about, and they're going to care about the presentation of this entire group.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.